So welcome to part 3 of this whole series in the Friday Value videos about plantar fasciitis, healthy foot function, and I showed you Betty Bones in the last one and explained how important it was for that heel to do a specific motion called inversion and eversion and why it mattered as far as the foot and how it impacts how you walk, because of it either being flexible, shock absorbing when it everts, or very solid and stable so you can push off a nice stable surface with inversion. Those are important. Now, I want to explain to you how and why that impacts the upper body. And I'm going to try to keep this simple because this could be a 20-part series. So I'm going to focus on the hips this time. And then the next one, I'm going to focus on the thoracic spine. So your hips, as you know, is the second most mobile joint in the body, second only to the shoulder, okay? So your hips are designed to do a lot of things. And when your heel bone everts and you get that beautiful, flexible, shock-absorbing surface of the foot, it leads to all kinds of things happening in the foot. And I'll list it really briefly. Your subtalar joint, or your talus, will drop down and in, and which causes the forefoot to do a specific movement, which triggers your leg bone, your tibia, right? Your shin bone, your tibia, and your femur to rotate in, to do an internal rotation. Now, when that happens, it allows your knee to dive in a little, and that's healthy. The knee is supposed to dive in a little, not a lot, but it wants to dive in a little, and that will adduct the hip, which moves it in toward midline. It will also shift the pelvis. The pelvis will move to a certain position. So I'll kind of show you here, and I'll show you from behind. So when I go to step on that, right, that adducts, which means my hip moves in toward midline, my pelvis kind of slides to the left, and it also rotates, right? It rotates, and it rotates internally because the arm and the opposite leg is when you take a step, right? And I'm exaggerating this so you can see it. So, and we'll get into the trunk in the next video. But it's really important that that hip is adducting, internally rotating, right? The pelvis is sliding over, and of course it's flexing as well. And so there's this potential kind of collapse of the knee and the hip going into flexion, and a lot of that has to do with gravity, right? And mass and momentum. But we want that foot to be flexible and absorbing shock. But we want it to do in a healthy way and at the right time. And then it transitions out of that because you've got muscles that are controlling that motion, right? Controlling it, decelerating it, keeping it from going too far for too long so that it can bring it out of that and move into that inversion, which is the heel. Now the talus or the subtalar joint is going to rotate up and out, and it's going to lead to those two leg bones to externally rotate, right? Or stop internally rotating. And now your hip is going to abduct, and again, it's going to externally rotate. And because of that, it changes everything, what's happening in the hips and the pelvis. So if your foot is not inverting and everting, your hip is not doing what it needs to do for healthy movement, healthy function, healthy gait, healthy running. It's all critical and based on what's happening with that heel bone. And obviously, any orthotic, any shoe will impact what's happening with that foot. So next time we'll talk about the thoracic spine. See you then.